Welcome back to the Commonwealth Matters. I'm Richard Nelson, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. And joining us on this program is special guest, State Senator Robbie Mills. He is the chairman of the State Senate, State and Local Government Committee in the State Senate.
Great.
Robbie, thank you for joining us.
Yep.
Hey, you have had a busy week. You have been in the news. Your committee's been in the news. The legislature really has, because one of the most significant things that the legislature does every 10 years is they take the new census information and they configure new districts. The House comes up with their plan, the Senate comes up with their plan. And of course, as you can imagine, when there are new districts configured, there's controversy and not everybody's going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
The reality is that Kentucky has not grown as quickly as other states.
Great.
The east part of the state has lost population. The west part of the state, where we're both from, have lost population. In fact, I looked at there are 38 Senate districts, and the vast majority of each of those districts have lost population.
They have. Yep.
The only growth has been in
central and northern Kentucky. Yep. So through the Lexington area, through northern Kentucky, substantial amount of growth. Our population looks like it grew about a little over 100,000 over the last 10 years. So we have 4.5 million people in Kentucky.
Tell us a little bit about the redistricting process, because this is one of those issues when you talk politics and talk redistricting, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of speculation. Tell us just an overview of what's involved with that.
Right. I mean, it's really a big math problem, to be honest with you. And you have to have your population before you can start the math problem. And that was one of our biggest challenges, is when we would get the census data. We got the census data somewhere in September, October. We have software, the state has software that manipulates this data. And so from September, October, Senate members, Senate staff, leadership in both the Senate and the House have been working on these numbers and trying to see, what has changed in these districts. And, our biggest concern was really equally distributing population as much as we can in our situation under 38 seats in the Senate. So the Senate, we kind of concentrated on the Senate maps and the congressional maps, and the House concentrated on the House maps. And so we had, both bodies were working on this population question, and we had some constitutional regards that we had to look after. The biggest constitutional that we had is really just, contiguous, and that districts had to be contiguous. So if we had 3 districts or 3 counties in a district, they had to touch each other. They had to be contiguous. And then also that they're nearly as possible equal as we could. In the House and the Senate, the Supreme Court had actually ruled in 2 different rulings over the last 15 to 20 years that near equal was interpreted as meaning plus or minus 5%. So plus or minus 5%, our number we were shooting for in the Senate was 118,000 citizens in each Senate district. And then it could vary 5% below or 5% above. So in the midst of everything, after we finished everything, all of our districts were plus or minus 5%. Even in the House, their districts were plus or minus 5%.
So that was one of the legal requirements to keep the populations equal per district in both House and Senate maps. Also keeping the geographical integrity of the districts intact. There are some other provisions too. There's a concern with minority voters being represented in the districts. So you have a lot of considerations when you put together these new maps, don't you?
Right, you do. And but our biggest concern was meeting our constitutional requirements, federal constitution, state constitution. We met those, and then of course you have outside groups that like to opine about all the kind of minor issues, but we feel like that our Senate maps are the best that we've produced since we've been in the majority.
So Senator Mills, one of those outside groups that follows this issue of redistricting very closely is the Kentucky League of Women Voters.
Right.
And Susan Perkins Weston was quoted in the Courier Journal commenting on the maps. She was on their redistricting committee. And she said that these maps, referring to the House and Senate, were clearly built to protect incumbents. And that leads to some substantial slicing up of our middle-sized counties. Now, she was referring to Laurel County, the ones that are too large to be districted by themselves. How do you respond to, was that, now this is a charge that you hear not just from her, but from others.
Right.
But the incumbent protection?
Yeah, I mean, we did not pit in the Senate maps. We did not pit an incumbent against an incumbent. In the House, they did pit 4 different pairs against each other, 2 in Jefferson County, 1 in Western Kentucky, 1 in Eastern Kentucky. They pitted incumbents together. They almost had to because their districts were smaller than our districts. They're dealing with 46,000 versus the 118 that we are. But, the League of Women Voters have always wanted input in the redistricting process. We gave them time at each one of our committee hearings to come and talk, and they submitted written documents. They produced plans. They submitted the plans to Senate and the House. So we looked at their plans, but ultimately the Constitution just gives the legislature the authority to do redistricting. Nobody else. It's a purely legislative authority, and we take that very serious. And it's interesting in the legislative situation, the minority is always wanting more input when they're in the minority, but when they switch around and become in the majority, then they all of a sudden want to follow the Constitution. So that's the normal push and pull that we have in the legislative process. But we feel like that we gave input, a proper amount of input from organizations like the League of Women Voters, and we also gave in the Senate the minority party, the Democratic Party, substantial input in the areas in Jefferson County.
Governor Andy Beshear had said that he was willing to call a special session, if I heard correctly, but he wanted to see the maps that you and House leaders had drawn as well. Of course, you did not share that with him, but the charge is that you did not work with the governor on this. Is that a fair charge? Yeah,
not really, to be honest with you. I mean, we have 3 arms of government, 3 stools of government, and there's always this push and pull that one part of government wants a little bit more power than the other part. And we see our legislative duties as in redistricting as ours solely. And we didn't feel like that we needed to share our maps with the governor. We felt like that it's his duty when he sees a need for legislation to call us into special session. He would not call us into special session unless we gave him the maps and he could see them before we went into special session. Of course, there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot next year that will solve that, where the legislature can call itself into special session to deal with situations like this. So if we would have had a special session, we wouldn't have had all the rushing in the first week. We wouldn't had to extend the filing deadline for 2.5 or 3 weeks and cause confusion in our counties and our local elections. So we see positives in having that special session. The governor just chose not to call us in. And in that situation, we just had to wait till last week to quickly pass these items.
Very good. If you're just joining us, State Senator Robbie Mills from Henderson is joining us, and he's giving us a legislative update. Robbie, we just talked about redistricting. There are 2 other bills I'd like us to spend the remaining amount of our time on, and you actually have them in your hand. You brought them over. One is called the SAFE Act. It is the stands for Save Adolescents from Experimentation. A couple other states have passed this, Arkansas, I think Tennessee, maybe another one. But essentially it says that minors cannot have hormone therapy or gender transition surgery until they're 18. What's the need for this in Kentucky? Is this something that's happening right now, where there are minors in the Commonwealth that are faced with this?
Yeah, Richard, unfortunately, this gender transitioning is really more of a fad, and it's things that the liberal groups are talking about, and we see parents actually encouraging their children to go through this transitioning phase, and even to the point of whether it's a nudge from the parents or a push from the parents. And what this bill is really about is to protect the children and protect their innocence and protect their bodies from harm until they're 18 and they can decide how they want to live their lives and what they want to do with their bodies.
What would be the arguments, and you've heard the arguments on both sides, but what would be the most challenging arguments, I should say, against a bill like this?
Yeah.
Why would somebody want to allow a minor 14, 15, 16-year-old to transition to the other gender?
It's, this is the LGBTQ issue in general is a very emotional issue. And so many people have connections to someone who is struggling with emotional and behavioral issues, their identity, who they are. And everybody has a personal connection. And I think that's the most challenging part of a piece of legislation like this. It's very obvious to me that, allowing someone to mutilate genitalia and do things that you cannot recover from easily is a form of child abuse. But yet you have the emotional connection of, I just want my child to be right, to feel right, to fit in. And those are the issues that you have to overcome in the legislation and talking to constituents. It's a prickly subject for sure.
It is. Real people are involved. There are people, young children, who are struggling with their identity, and some people are convinced that they would be better off identifying as the opposite gender, opposite sex. I've known you long enough to know that you don't intend to harm anybody. You don't want to demean anybody. And I know that personally. I've known you well as a friend. So full disclosure, Robby's been a friend. At the same time, and the reason I'm asking the tough questions or challenges to this is because you hit the nail on the head. There are family relationships. There are people you care for, and parents care about their kids and they want to support their kids. Right. At the same time, Robby, parents and their wishes can't overrule what is best for that children. And here's what I mean. Children can't drive until they're age 16. Right. They can't vote until they're 18. They can't drink alcohol till they're 21. And these are public policies that we've agreed on as being good for the safety of children and for the good of society. Would you see the SAFE Act falling in the same lines? Absolutely.
I mean, one of the reasons why we don't let kids drive until they're 16, they make rash decisions, quick decisions, improper, unsafe decisions when they're driving. So similar to this, a fad, something that a teacher or other fellow student has talked to them about, and all of a sudden they want to make this big change. We're protecting the children until they get mature enough to make good, solid decisions. We're also protecting the children from their parents who might be misinformed and might want to put this on them. And in my opinion, I see it as an abusive situation.
Very good. One last bill I'd like to discuss, and something you're going to introduce as well, the Save Women's Sports Act, which would prevent biological males from competing on girls' sports teams or biological females from competing on boys' sports teams. Right. It's become a real issue across the country. We're seeing men who identify as women getting into women's sports and dominating complete sports. So you see that swimmer in Pennsylvania doing that, and this happened elsewhere. Tell us a little bit about your Save Women's Sports Act for Kentucky.
Yeah, so real quickly, it just requires the Kentucky High School Athletic Association to label sports boys, co-ed, or girls, and it does not allow boys to actually compete in a girls' sport. And it doesn't address hormone therapy. It doesn't address how long they've been under therapy and things of that nature. It just says, if you're a biological male, you cannot compete in women's sports, just plain and simple.
And that's only through K, I'm sorry to interrupt, so only through K through 12.
K through 12, yeah, it does not address the more difficult part of this subject, which is NCAA college sports. And, you know, when we start talking about that, then the NCAA is a very liberal organization, and the University of Kentucky, University of Louisville, our other regional colleges are all concerned about what NCAA would do if the state of Kentucky had, banned transgender athletes. So I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's going to work its way out here over the next year or so. But I'm really more concerned about the young lady that's a very good athlete, and she's 13 or 14 years old, and all of a sudden she is competing against a male and being beat after she's really worked hard to be on that team or on that group, and it's just not fair. You know, it really pushes and makes women's sports fall back, you know, many years. There's been a lot of attempts to allow women to have equal opportunity in sports, and something like this really sets them back quite a bit.
So, Robbie, because of fairness, because you care about maintaining women's sports and giving opportunities to young girls who want to compete against other young girls, you are proposing this again. I want to reemphasize something I said before, because often when you have legislation like this, you're accused of being cold-hearted, or you don't like certain groups of people, but that's really not the motivation here.
It's not. It's just, we want young ladies to have opportunities in high school, and we don't think it's fair for a male to do some hormone therapy and then all of a sudden be able to run a 400-yard dash against a young lady. And that is happening around the country. That will continue to happen because, once again, like I said earlier, this is a fad, and this is something that it's kind of a tsunami or a wave that you see coming. So.
Very good, Robbie. That was the timer. That means our time is up.
We're ready to go.
I've enjoyed this. This has been a good program.
Yes, sir.
Best to you this
Thank you.
legislative session. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Richard.